Hey, I found a good thread and another excuse to simp for robot socialism, so let's go. The problem isn't that AI will take our jobs, the problem is that we built a society that needs jobs to be taken. Yeah. I mean, taking jobs should be a celebration, something we should be trying to automate away jobs instead of trying to create bullshit jobs and try to slow down essentially human progress. Like, oh yeah, I figured out something, should I share this with humanity? No, I should patent it and try to exploit it as much as possible, make sure others don't have it. If they have it, I'll just destroy it. So I feel like I'm onto something or on something, but if everyone suddenly had a blueberry button in their home that could produce perfect blueberries on demand, what's the first thing people would say? But what about the blueberry farmers? What about their jobs? Oh boy, I don't think that's what people will say. I don't think people care, right? Does the regular Joe really worry about other people losing their jobs? They care about them losing their jobs, at most. And that's exactly the problem. We built a society where automation of labor, even tedious, unnecessary labor, is seen as a threat rather than a liberation. Yeah, that's an excellent point. Why? Because we tie basic human dignity and survival to the performance of labor, even when that labor becomes unnecessary. Yeah. The truth is, AI will replace human work, a lot of it, and we need to stop pretending otherwise. But that's not actually the problem. The problem is that we've created a system where people need their work to be irreplaceable to survive. Yeah, just smash machines. I guess you can argue that possibly new jobs are gonna come in. Although I'm not super happy with the jobs on offer. Also, you're not really guaranteed a job either, even though that you need one to live. At very least, we would need to be on the level that everyone can safely have a home and all kids and like replacement level at the very least. Instead of asking how do we protect jobs from AI, we should be asking why have we built a society where people need protected from abundance? Yeah. Well, it's kind of capitalism. Capitalism could have some good incentives, but it can be kind of messed up. It's just going for most profits, not really human well-being. The concept that if you don't work, you deserve to die by the side of the road is deeply baked into the fabric of civilization. It's almost inexpugnable fact of life for most people. Paired with the if no pressure to work, people won't. And if there's no reward, I'm not doing it. It's functionally incomprehensible to a huge cross-section of society, both left and right, rich and poor, liberal and conservative. And the thing is, this is already not true. We don't believe in this. If we believed in this, we would take away all the money from the rich people. I rarely see this argument made in favor of just taking away all the money from the rich people because, like, oh, look at that, they're doing that dumb nepotism bullshit again. They're the most useless, even though they consume the most. So the poor are only, or the workers, those who are the wages essentially, they are only motivated by the threat of starvation. But others are okay. They can't comprehend the concept of people just taking care of themselves and each other without a ticking time bomb strapped to their survival and a bunch of money at the other end. They're so mentally broken by the system that people can imagine the way their ancestors lived for millions of years. The thing about socialism, that it's not some kind of a hippie thing that you might arrive at as like, oh man, we should be like good to the other people. Like, no, this is what you would arrive at if you start considering what would be the most effective way of running society. Millions of years was anything less than a painful, fearful, miserable nightmare of might makes right, death by infectious disease. They can't understand that without strict authority and control and reward structure, people do in fact peacefully set, organize, and figure shit out, doing so not because they have to, but because they can. Also, it would be like okay if you like had to work a little bit less. The truth is, if you don't go into debt and find a niche where rent is low or non-existent, you'll be perfectly fine and happy. But you'll be a pariah? Engineering an entire society to fear of death and... Yeah, but that's not what everyone is playing. If you're a capitalist, you're playing a completely different game. Any relevance if they aren't going into debt and paying it off with daily repetitive hours-based labor? It's unnatural and bizarre. Yeah, if you just go back to Rome, then you had the slaves. I mean, though that they had it bad. Then you had the proletariat. They were like just one step away from the slaves, but they had some hope of becoming like become to the point where they actually make their money without having a master. And that's the difference between a slave, because a slave has a master, and the proletariat has to find a master for themselves. And more than ever, these days, you have to have it for life. It's a 200-year-old philosophy that reached its peak in 1976. When Homestead Act was revoked in the United States. After that, de facto system, money or die, took over. Also might think that capitalism kind of makes people inhumane. No doubt this is incentivized to just make the money no matter what. And it would be naive to assume that profit equals betterment of mankind. It's functionally illegal to occupy a spot of land, build a home without paying for it, and live there rent-free without a job outside of it. The default way of life for all humans is functionally legal, or extremely improbable to make a living on your own. Not impossible, functionally legal. I guess if you're just talking about a spot of land, even though you have to consider, like, who owns that land? Did you make that dirt? True freedom, by its original definition, is functionally legal. Let that sink in. If you deny it, go try it. Find some unowned land, pitch a tent there, live there for a while, see if BLM, code enforcement, or private property owner doesn't freak out and have you forcibly removed. Try living without going into debt. Throw away credit cards and refuse college, car loans, rent, monthly bills, or mortgages. Those are all off limits. See how long you'll last? That's the litmus test for how dependent people are in the de facto system of control. I think the right possibly makes sense if you don't have a master. But people have multiple masters. They have the country, the government as their masters, and also they have their job as their authority and government, essentially. The system of dependency is a system of authority and control. They left no exit. AI won't fix that reality. People are so afraid of the other shoe dropping, they'll remake the cage if you break them out of it. Our economic system demands people consume. It's capitalism that drives the need for people to be working all the time. We have low wages and high cost of living, such that a small minority can accrue ludicrous, unnecessary wealth. Survival is a driver for the vast majority because excess for a tiny minority is how the system structured to operate, i.e. shareholders and the highest ranking. It's perpetual wealth extraction. Automation is just the next logical step in that paradigm. The thing is that people can't even compete with that. Because when it comes to another person, you can at least argue that you kind of have some minimum level of needs, I suppose. But when it comes to like automation, you will never be able to compete with that. Unless this somehow just creates jobs. But like you might argue that, oh yeah, you're like wrong. Like this is not gonna happen like soon, but perhaps. But the thing is, this is I can spot a trend. Labor only becomes unnecessary when people have enough wealth to work less. I mean, that really should have happened already, and that is dependent on how the system is structured, not on whether AI exists. People, well, or they have a bunch of bullshit jobs. Of course, if you have a bullshit job that pays well, then you probably should just keep that. AI can be behind painful, and wages can stagnate even further because the powerful dictate what those thresholds are. Protection from abundance is laughable. This is not an attitude, it's reality. The earth has abundance already, but most people do not get to enjoy it. AI will only entrench existing power structures unless it's truly open sourced. Q, neolib, bleating. TLDR, the problem is not technology, it's capitalism. Technologies are tools. They can be used for pro-social goals, or they can be destructive depending on pro-social incentives. What can be more freeing than having machines take over a lot of the tough work we had to do until now? An interesting story could be that suppose you could automate your jobs before with like Python scripts or something. You would be highly incentivized to do so, but if you get caught, you get fired for not doing your job, right? So that's interesting. And people are not really incentivized to fix problems. They are incentivized to profit off problems constantly. When you look at like the managerial class, do they ever say that they need less managers? It's almost certainly not. They need more managers. That's got to be the solution. But in capitalism, you need to do work that will be considered valuable and thus paid in order to survive. In another social structure, right? It could be the most amazingly wonderful thing ever with little to no negatives. I mean, if we were in that, then people would be highly incentivized to automate things and to share information so things get even automated even faster, and there's going to be more collective abundance.